Note, this is all based on personal opinion, and nothing I say in this video is meant to upset or rile anyone up. I get that the Wonkas are a hot debate, nobody's right or wrong, don't get mad at me. Okay, let's go. So, right off the bat, I'm gonna start off with my personal favorite, and arguably the best depiction of Willy Wonka, the Tim Burton Willy Wonka. I can already hear you sharpening those pitchforks, so just hold on a second. Now, I know a lot of people really dislike this version of Willy Wonka, but I find a lot of that hate just comes from personal bias. I personally did not grow up with the original 1970s version, and while I do enjoy both versions of the story, the Tim Burton one just holds a special place in my heart and is arguably far more true to the original source material from Roald Dahl, while also giving him a lot more depth as a character. Personally, I'm one who enjoys a good backstory, and while there were a lot of people who didn't seem to care all that much for Wonka's sob story, I honestly found it pretty compelling and important to his character. His father took away the childhood he should have had, and now he's recreated a version of it in his adult life, albeit with some lingering trauma and lack of maturity from simply not having anyone to raise him for a fat majority of his life. Yeah, you can see why he's a few quarters short from a buck. I also just generally love the personality of this Willy Wonka far more than the others. He achieves that creepy, underlying sense of something is definitely not right with this guy, while also maintaining a cutesy and fun attitude. He honestly feels pretty autism-coded to me, which is probably another reason why I can relate to this version of Wonka far better as someone who is on the spectrum and tends to have this weird, quirky attitude, and also likes to sass children on a regular basis. So, yeah, I'm giving this Wonka a 10 out of 10. He's a sassy, cute little bundle of unresolved trauma, and also he's wearing my favorite color, so that's cool too. Okay, now moving on to everyone's favorite Wonka, Gene Wilder from the original 1971 Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. So, just to clear things up so I don't upset any of you Wilder fans out there, I don't hate this Wonka. In fact, I actually find him very endearing. While I wouldn't say he's my favorite by any stretch of the margin, I do still think he has a lot of charm. He's not as soft-spoken and childish in his demeanor as the Tim Burton version, but in a way, I think that only accentuates his strange, borderline psychotic quirkiness even further, making him unique in his own right. He's unpredictable and odd, as a Wonka should be, and despite Roald Dahl's unbridled hatred for the way Wilder portrayed his character, I can still come to appreciate it myself. And this honestly could just be me, but he feels a lot more creepy compared to the other Wonkas. Just something about the way he interacts with the guests and his bouts of insanity, not to mention the way he just utterly screams at a child by the end of the film. Something about him just feels like a ticking time bomb. Like this man could snap at any given moment and do God knows what. I don't know. I honestly feel like I have to give this Wonka a 7 out of 10. He's the classic, the original, but not exactly the best, in my personal opinion. Okay, lastly we have the most recent depiction of Wonka. Literally, the film is just called Wonka, made in 2023. I have a lot to say about this character. No, actually, I have a lot to say about this film. I get that they were trying to go with the new trend of character backstories, and while I do appreciate them going through the effort of trying to do that with this character, a part of me just feels like it wasn't necessary? Don't get me wrong, this movie was really well done. As someone who isn't a big musical person, I actually really enjoyed this film, and I thought it was whimsical and charming in its own way. But I still struggle to wrap my head around what they were trying to do. I know that they were trying to match up a backstory for the Gene Wilder Wonka, but personally, I just didn't feel like they did a really good job at that. Mainly because this Wonka feels so different from Wilder. I know there is a theory floating around that maybe as Wonka got older he became more unhinged? But I don't know. Timothy's portrayal of Wonka still feels so deeply out of proportion, and I just don't see them as being the same characters, like, at all. Maybe if they were to make a sequel to Wonka, showing his rise to fame and success, and kinda explaining how he got to this point in Wilder's portrayal, but I don't know. I still feel like that's a bit of a stretch to pull off, and I doubt that Hollywood would be able to do it well enough, especially in this day and age where everyone's just kind of making money grabbers and not really putting in the time and effort for anything anymore. But I digress. What do I think of this Wonka? Well, as a separate character from the other two versions, I think I like him. He is certainly far different from his two older counterparts. He's got that fresh spark of youth, wanting to desperately achieve his dreams and fight for success. At the same time, he shows his flaws in his naivety and is put against an obstacle where he's forced to learn the reality that not everyone can be trusted and you need to get smarter if you want to avoid challenges like that in the future. His backstory with his mom and living on a boat and stuff was interesting, to say the least. I kinda wish we had gotten a little more from that, though. I get that it's a kid's movie and it's not supposed to be exponentially long, but I don't know. I love details, and when there's not enough there for my little tism brain to work with, it frustrates me a little bit. Apart from that, though, I found his interactions with the other characters really fun, especially Noodle. I liked watching their friendship develop over the course of the story, and the ending, spoiler alert, where Wonka finally brings her to her real mom. It's just, honestly, I cried. There's really not a whole lot to say about this Wonka, if I'm being completely honest. He's a far simpler character in comparison to the others. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing, but I just don't think there was too much to get into with him. I feel like I had more to say about the movie itself than anything. But anyway, I'll give him a 5 out of 10. Definitely the lesser of the bunch, but not bad. Anyways, thanks for listening to my super unprofessional, hyper-fixated autism rambling about a franchise literally no one cares about except for me. I'd tell you to subscribe and leave a like and all that, but I don't know. I don't really do anything on this channel, so there isn't really a point. I barely post, so